and there was literally cars on fire like outside our.
That probably doesn't give you the best impression. Like, hey, come on down from it. We'll show you how our workplace is. Don't mind the fires and the burning cars. Those just are. It's a special event. We're not. Good morning, everyone. We're gonna be jumping into some Gaming
Did
for
you know? At one of the first
Luigi's
development
Mansion
meetings for
facts.
Luigi's Mansion 2, one of the devs pulled out a marker and drew a you-know-what on the whiteboard. The game was being made by Canadian studio Next Level Games, with Nintendo's Japanese devs overseeing their work. Staff from both companies were in the meeting, but nobody spoke anyone else's language. So doodling a chub was one Canadian guy's idea to
interesting
break the
strategy.
ice. It was a bold and risky move, but luckily for him, it paid off. Everyone thought it was hilarious.
Like, what do you expect?
They had a translator, of course, but the language barrier wasn't always easy to overcome. Sometimes the interpreter had to mime the move.
How would you really go about that? Having a meeting between two teams that cannot communicate with each other? That feels like it would be hell. I don't know how you would even start a meeting like that. Let me shrink down a little. There we go. Because there's a lot of miscommunication that could happen very easily.
Movements Nintendo wanted Next Level to animate. For today's video, we translated some old Japanese magazines and interviewed developers to get the inside scoop on secrets,
I think that picture
content,
there was
what it was like working with Miyamoto,
the
and all
D-rank,
sorts of behind-the-scenes tidbits
Luigi's
for
Mansion
Luigi's
1
Mansion
picture.
1, 2,
I don't think that even
and
exists
3.
anymore.
Stuff like, have you ever wondered what Miyamoto's Mii looks like? When he visited Next Level HQ, everyone bought their 3DSs so they could street pass with him. Even devs from other companies showed up hoping to get Miyamoto's Mii living in their 3DS. One of the guys we
I think they
talked
passed
to,
that on at
Mark
one point and it was all
Facade,
gold
showed us
pants.
his mini Miyamoto. It looks just like him, doesn't it? We think he's actually cosplaying as Link. It's been 10 years, but Mark's still got him, and he says he'll keep him forever. But despite language and cultural barriers, all the devs we spoke to said Luigi's Mansion 2 was a fun game to make. Some said it was the most fun they had in their entire careers. Miyamoto literally told them to have fun.
And
Next Level management was like,
go to it,
are you
'cause I
sure?
couldn't do it with
But
the DS.
Miyamoto insisted that fun development would yield a game that's fun to play. At first, Next Level was working on a top-secret Metroid game, the one we covered last year. But one day, they got a call from Nintendo saying to scrap it and make Luigi's Mansion 2 instead. Secrecy was top priority. They gave it the codename Green Onion so they could...
I get the green part, but onion? I can't figure out the onion
talk about
part.
the game without anyone knowing the series was making a comeback. They couldn't even tell each other about it.
It was very, very confidential. So for about like a year, there were only 4 people in this one room. There's like a mystery room with a key.
Uber, like, you know, like confidentiality, like closed room, no windows, like everyone on that project had a special card to get in that room.
And these 4 people would go into work and they would all go into this room and we didn't know what they were doing.
While those 4
It's like, oh yeah, we just go in that room and we nap for like 3 hours, pop out, have lunch, and then go back and nap again. That'd be a very impressive thing if you could get away with it.
The guys were locked in the windowless room. They explored taking the series in a completely new direction. They went to Nintendo and pitched the idea of making...
It's true. Like, I've played all of Luigi's Mansion 1 and Luigi's Mansion 3. Luigi's Mansion 2, I only managed to make it to the second area. And they're such drastically different areas. I really enjoyed that. I just couldn't do the DS controls as well. So more reason for me to go look for it for the Switch version, but it's definitely a very
making Luigi's
well-made
Mansion 2
game.
more of a detective game. They also did some experimenting with Luigi's Mansion as a clone of Gauntlet.
Gauntlet would be weird. Like, is he going to be firing his green fireballs in that case? Like, yeah, there's ghosts, but like, it's interesting.
The classic top-down dungeon crawler. But Miyamoto was watching a lot of TV dramas at the time, so he suggested they follow the template of the original game, but in a more episodic format. The devs ended up watching a lot of Mr. Bean and essentially molded the game's humor and personality around it, with Luigi as the hapless fool and reluctant hero.
That honestly explains a lot. It is very over-the-top movements and such, and that is what they were known for. So I feel like if they hadn't modeled that, would Luigi have even been remotely the same at this point? Because the Luigi Mansion games in general had so much influence on Luigi as a character.
Wow! Secrecy was so
and
paramount,
I'd be terrified too if I walk in a place and there were slams behind me.
Things, like what system they were developing for. They thought it was going to be for the Nintendo DS, but one day they were flown to Japan where Satoru Iwata literally pulled a sheet off a table revealing, ta-da, the 3DS. Even after the team got a lot bigger, up to a team of 20 devs, they were still locked in a secret room with no windows, signing piles of confidentiality agreements, and forbidden to tell their co-workers what was going on.
It was extra high security for that project.
But like,
because we're also
why would it be that?
It was so secret, it was kind of fun.
If Nintendo demands that level of secrecy for a handheld,
like, I don't know if was this in development way before the 3DS was known about? Is that why they would have such level of secrecy and like, hey, you have to do all this? Or because I don't think, sorry, Luigi, I don't think Luigi's Mansion on its own would have warranted that level of security, so it's got to have been hiding the 3DS or something.
Mario spin-off sequel, you can imagine how locked down they keep even bigger projects. We've got more exclusive developer secrets for Luigi's Mansion 2 coming up, but it wouldn't feel right if we just skipped over the game that started it all. The development of the original Luigi's Mansion is pretty well documented these days, but there's still a handful of facts that aren't widely known. And
speaking of not widely known facts, I actually saw earlier, I think it was this morning, just randomly, is Luigi in the remake of the first Luigi's Mansion? Because I saw a picture and it was showing EGAD in his like area for Luigi's Mansion 1, saying that he got a call from his future self with, and then Luigi standing in the background. So like, was Luigi in the remake of the first one? Because I haven't played it, but I didn't think he was.
Some secrets that are unheard of, at least in the West. We found one such fact buried in the August 2001 issue of Japan's 64 Dream magazine, which we had translated for this video.
How much research would you do for
Dream's
that?
coverage of E3 2001, the year Nintendo came out guns blazing and revealed their GameCube launch lineup, Luigi's Mansion included. 64 Dream managed to get some FaceTime with Miyamoto and got him to spill the beans on the upcoming games. He talked briefly about Luigi's Mansion's origins, and it seemed to be a long time coming. The staff had been long saying, Mario again? We want to use Luigi. Ha 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 ha. And we got those people together to start working on this game as something to play before the next Mario. But we still wanted to include Mario somewhere, and I suggested his hands could be sticking out from under a bed holding a box, but that was rejected. Ha ha ha! It seems initially the devs weren't quite sure how to work Mario into the game, but thankfully Miyamoto's suggestion was quickly shot down and they came up with something a little better than limbs under a bed. You've probably
just his clothes, which is concerning in multiple reasons, but because he seems to be wearing all of that in the painting as well. So
we heard Nintendo experimented with stereoscopic 3D while developing Luigi's Mansion on the GameCube. It didn't pan out, but getting Nintendo bigwigs to embrace 3D became a decade-long push for director Hideki Kono. Yet Kono had some significant obstacles to overcome if he was gonna win them over. Nintendo still had a bad taste in their mouths from the failure of the Virtual Boy while making Luigi's Mansion, and there were doubts internally about stereoscopic 3D in general. The other big problem was 3D TVs were expensive at the time, so if Nintendo did produce a 3D screen for consumers, it wouldn't have been affordable for most people, and that's kind of the opposite of Nintendo's vibe. But Kono persisted and
I'm not going to bring up the Switch 2's cost. I'm not going to bring up this. Like, it's affordability. I can understand it, but like Nintendium never goes down in price. So I don't know. I don't know if affordability is still their thing.
Believed the tech would get better and cheaper. Kono would demo 3D again on the Wii, attaching a 3D panel to the system and making 3D demos of Mario.
Oh, is that, I wonder, part of what made them want to do like the 3DS in general, just because like I was gonna say Wii U, but I feel like it's too early for that, and the size of the screen gives me much bigger DS vibes.
Wii, Animal Crossing, and Wii Sports to win over his colleagues. Kono told Edge magazine, "In Japan, there's a maxim: a glance is better than 100 words. Even with words, I wasn't able to convince anyone. So I presented the demo to Miyamoto and Iwata, and they were stunned and agreed to take it in that direction." This 3D Wii demonstration in part led to the creation of the 3DS, where Luigi's Mansion would finally be playable in stereoscopic 3D. So Kono's experiments with Luigi on GameCube eventually led to the creation of the 3DS, where those 3D experiments were finally realized. However, this isn't the only feature cut from the original game that ended up in the 3DS remake. The devs planned for the original game to have a multiplayer mode where Luigi met another Luigi. After Luigi's Mansion 2 was greenlit, both
The Scare Scraper. So that was where this originated. I only played a little bit of it. It's a very complicated mode, but that's good. That's good.
Kono and Miyamoto said the sequel absolutely had to include multiplayer, and it made its way in. Then, when the game released on 3DS, they made sure multiplayer was added to it as well. We've got more exclusive
there was my confirmation about Luigi. It was literally on screen right there. Perfect.
facts for the exclusive Luigi's Mansion 2 facts. In the final game, Luigi can shine the dark light device to break illusions and see invisible objects. But the original idea was much more ambitious and would have divided the game into two separate
dark light
realities,
do?
the normal world and the spirit world. The idea was inspired by the Dark World from Zelda: A Link to the Past,
Okay,
as
that
well
would
as
have been
Dark
real
Aether
cool,
from
but then
Metroid Prime 2.
it would have been so much more
there'd be a spirit world
complicated
basically
of
hiding
the
behind every room
mansion.
in Luigi's Mansion 2, but the dark light device proved quicker and easier, so that's what they ultimately went with instead.
There'd be
Aspirations
pits
for
that you could cross
multiplayer
with
were
it. That'd be
aggressive, with
actually pretty
Miyamoto saying
impressive.
he wanted fans playing it more than they played multiplayer Mario Kart. One mode was originally going to be
How are you going to beat Mario Kart? Really? Like, that's the line you want to go with? Like, you're not passing Mario Kart for multiplayer.
called Tower of Terror, but Disney already had the name copyrighted for their theme park ride, so they changed it to Scare Scraper. Or at least that's what it's called in the American version. In the UK version, it's called Thrill Tower. There was going to be another mode within Scare Scraper focused on killing rats called the Pest Floor, but Miyamoto didn't like it, so he cut the Pest Floor in a single meeting. There was another multiplayer mode called Haunt and Seek that programmer Gary Shaw told us they spent a lot of time on, but unfortunately it ended up getting cut. Gameplay was basically online Pac-Man, where one player's Luigi collects keys and 3 others are ghosts who can fly through walls. Instead of a top-down view like Pac-Man though, it would use standard 3D camera angles, and there
That would be so hard to balance, though. Like, if you can fly through walls, Luigi can only get you in the one room, so you'd be... And, yeah, maybe you have low health, but still, you could cause so much chaos.
was a unique mansion instead of the traditional Pac-Man stage. Ghosts could steal keys and scare Luigi, while Luigi could stun them with his flashlight and suck them up with the poltergust. After Haunt and Seek got scrapped, a simplified version made its way to Nintendo Land as a minigame called Luigi's Ghost Mansion. One aspect of the game that saw a lot of cuts and reworks was its bosses. In an Iwata Asks interview back in 2013, director Bryce Holiday
I don't remember this boss. This must be from Dark Moon. Because, like, that's like a flaming keyboard. I remember the scary keyboard from Mario 64, but I don't recognize this one.
He mentioned that the Haunted Tower stage wasn't always planned to have a stairway boss. It was originally going to have a plant-based boss that tied into the level's botanical theme, but Miyamoto thought that it was too ordinary and upended the tea table. That's kind of Miyamoto's thing. If he doesn't like how a game's progressing, he'll just tell devs to start over, a metaphorical table flip. So instead of a plant, Miyamoto suggests that they make a boss out of the stairs. So they did. In another interview with IGN, Holiday said Miyamoto's
Oh, it's stairs. I still thought it was a piano. I guess I'm still just scarred from Mario 64.
key table upending went even further than this. At one point, he threw out all the bosses of the game and made us start over. From our angle, that was kind of a tea table flip. Thankfully, this was still early days, and the team hadn't started modeling most of the bosses yet. They'd only made one, and the rest were just concepts. Miyamoto felt that the bosses should be unmistakably Luigi's Mansion in the player's eyes, so anything cliché or ordinary simply wouldn't do. Some bosses got tossed out multiple times, like the icy secret mine boss, which got tossed out about 4 times before the final design was made. Gary Shaw told us about one of these unused boss concepts, which
That ice mine one just looks like it'd be annoying because you're only going to be able to hit what it lets you. You're not going to be able to shoot random parts. It feels like it really takes a lot of choice away from them. I guess I won't be looking forward to that stage when I get to it, but...
As a mirror-based boss he said the team worked on for months. The player would have seen the boss through a mirror, but there was some asymmetry between reality and the reflection, and the player would have to exploit those differences to beat the boss. Gary couldn't remember the exact way you defeat the boss, but he thinks that you'd beat it by tricking it into falling off a cliff.
It's a clever, interesting idea, but in the end
just
didn't
oops,
work.
accidentally just pushed them off.
We mentioned earlier about Miyamoto's first time visiting Next Level. He visited their Vancouver office one more time, but things took a turn for the worse. The city's hockey team made it to the NHL Championship for the first time in 20 years, but they ended up getting massacred by the other team 4-0. Hockey fans started tearing the city apart, all while
That's a
Miyamoto
big
was
difference
there
in
for his
hockey.
visit.
Oh
The
no.
riot as a result left the city broken and burning.
One Next Level dev who wanted to remain anonymous told us that, unfortunately, the Canucks lost, and there was a riot downtown. Next Level's offices are right in the middle of downtown, and we were trying to get him around, and there was literally cars on fire like outside our office.
That probably doesn't give you the best impression. Like, hey, come on down from it. We'll show you how our workplace is. Don't mind the fires and the burning cars. Those just are. It's a special event. We're not doing it. It's not normal. Be fine next week.
Office. I recall
Like,
that
how
being an
would
issue
you
at the
explain
office,
this?
making sure Miyamoto was okay in the middle of this city, on fire. All the windows were smashed around our office, cars were being flipped over. Needless to say, after that, Miyamoto wasn't especially keen to visit Vancouver again. But Next Level had proved themselves to Nintendo and were tasked with making another Mario game, Luigi's Mansion 3.
So when does Luigi Mansion 4 come out again? Like, if they did one for GameCube, 3DS, and Switch, does that mean it's gonna be like late in the Switch 2's life cycle, or are we just not getting one for Switch 2?
This project was originally aimed at the Wii U. However, with the console failing to sell and Nintendo ultimately abandoning it, work was shifted to the Nintendo Switch and serious development began after Next Level shipped Metroid Prime Federation Force for 3DS in 2016. When Luigi's Mansion 3 entered pre-production, secrecy was back on the menu, with a few guys closed off in a small room for 2 or 3 years brainstorming ideas. Some of them didn't end up being used, but were pretty interesting. One unused idea was a sort of fast travel system where there's TVs all over the hotel and Luigi can warp into one and out of another. According to producer Kensuke Tanabe, this wasn't fully realized because they weren't able to put a TV in every room, so the mechanic ended up getting downsized to only existing on the 8th floor Paranormal Productions. Tanabe also said they'd been thinking about how...
And that's fair. I mean, all you've effectively done, if you're going to have it as a central transfer place, you've made the elevator. That's the only thing you've really caused. If it goes to specific rooms, you've made puzzles way more complicatable. Because like, oh, yeah, you remember that water you had in floor 1 on the left-hand side? Let's bring that to floor 4 on the right-hand side to water this plant. No, there's no other source of water in the game. Enjoy. Repeat 80 times. I'm glad they went with the elevator concept. Really self-contains each of the stages.
Labo could be used, but didn't reveal how exactly. By the time the game came out, Labo was kind of on the way out anyway. Oh, and just as a brief aside, while researching this video, we found out that Luigi's Mansion 3's lead technical character artist, Jeffrey Zoern, was, get this, the art director for Hotel Mario on Philips CDI. Somehow, old Jeffrey managed to make the art for the 2 hotel-themed Mario games 25 years apart.
Hey, the guy's got a specialty. He just knows what he can do well.
Sorry, but we just had to mention that. Can you blame us?
I mean, no, that's very important
the final game takes place
information.
in a 17-story hotel, and initially the devs thought about replicating the kind of hotels you'd see in Hollywood that have roller coasters running through them. But, quote, it did not ultimately get used. We wanted to make things even weirder, so we moved away from that. Despite them wanting to get even weirder
I guess, yeah,
with the concept,
going
part
more
of
and
the
more
reason
normal
that they set the game
can
in a
make it
hotel
weirder.
all stemmed from something boring and monotonous: floor layouts. In most hotels, the layout of the rooms and corridors are the same no matter what the floor is. So room 202 is directly above room 102, and so on.
It does
Early
make
in
it
development,
easier.
The devs thought about concentrating on puzzles that spanned rooms that were side by side. Then they realized a repeating floor plan would make visualizing an entire building a lot easier, and meant they could also make puzzles that spanned rooms vertically, like across rooms 102 and 202, without much confusion. Tanabe gave an example of the kind of puzzles they were making via the Switch's Nintendo News channel, saying that if players saw water dripping down from the ceiling, they'd realize they should probably explore the room directly above them. Tanabe gave this example about 4 months before the game's release, so you'd probably
I don't think there
expect his
was too
example,
many
or
puzzles
something
that
like it,
used
to
that.
pop up in the game a few times. But the game we got was noticeably thin on
I say
puzzles
just
with crossed floors.
just
So
under the
what's
bathrooms,
deal?
really.
Well, it turns out those kinds of puzzles are hard to develop and maintain, and they confuse players. Like we said, one of the reasons they decided to set the game in a hotel was to implement those kinds of puzzles, but it seems that the team bit off more than they could chew. At least that's the impression we got from the interview that this info came from. In the same interview, Holiday went on.
I'm jealous, Luigi. The second you open the book, you're out? Like, come on.
To reveal other aspects of the hotel that got cut, like ice and fire themed floors. One of the core principles the team held while developing Luigi's Mansion 3 was to make the game truly unique, unmistakably Luigi's Mansion, and all while surprising the players. But having generic ice and fire areas sort of flew in the face of that whole philosophy, so those floors were dropped. Speaking of surprising players, Luigi's Mansion 3 turned a few heads when fans found out it would have paid DLC.
Groove,
Nintendo
VG?
announced 2 multiplayer DLC packs for the game, which inevitably led to speculation about single-player DLC. And since the game is set in a hotel and all, the devs could potentially add new floors, maybe as post-game content. Well, a few months later...
Hey, I know you've almost made it to King Boo, but we were bored. We built 3 more floors in the middle of the hotel. Yes, King Boo is still on the top. You need to just... We're going to put those floors in right in the middle. You'll be fine. Oh, you no longer have access to anything higher than the floor. Enjoy!
So Kotaku asked Tanabe if we would get new floors as DLC. Tanabe's response? He hadn't even thought about it. He elaborated. In Luigi's Mansion 3, it has a solid introduction, development, twist, and conclusion.
It really does. It
Therefore,
was pretty
by
well
inserting
made.
an additional floor, they would be in consistency with the setting and chronological order, and we would end
But
up
it could be
restarting the
fun.
story in an incomplete way, which the player would have already finished. Seems like Tanabe's biggest hang-up was how extra floors would impact the game's story and overall experience. Which
You just make them like EGAD helping
But the
ones.
team at Next Level had a different view, at least for a time, and wanted to make a single-player expansion from the very beginning. However, this desire apparently faded pretty quickly, and they turned their attention to multiplayer DLC instead.
Oh no,
Bryce
watch out for
Holiday
the...
told Kotaku,
the
making story
rope.
mode games is a difficult
log.
and slower
Where'd I get the
process
rope?
development-wise than multiplayer modes, so we ended up pushing multiplayer content to DLC. An additional benefit is that the cut single-player ideas can be saved for something else in the future. Something else
and they
in the
have
future.
Part 4,
if all
I
of Luigi's
guess.
Mansion 3's content were made
I
under
think
the
it did
core
well,
principle
so
of
I
being
feel we are getting a
uniquely
4.
Luigi's Mansion, and the team plans on using cut content for ideas on a future project, should we be expecting a Luigi's Mansion 4? In an interview with GameSpot, Tanabe spoke a little about the creative process.
Oh
of
yes,
Next Level,
piranhas
and
in the
just casually name dropped
washer.
the
It's
4th
fine.
game like it was something already on the docket. Even when I'm creating something, I'm constantly thinking about the next thing. Even as we're wrapping up development of Luigi's Mansion 3, Next Level Games is like, what about Luigi's Mansion 4? What's going to come after a hotel? And to be honest, making Luigi's Mansion 4 is kind of a no-brainer.
Luigi's Mansion 4, it's going to be a suburban house,
Luigi's
that's it.
Mansion has basically doubled the sales of the last. And there might even be more Luigi's Mansion projects on the horizon. Luigi was a prominent character in the
Because yeah, they did remake the first one and the second one. I don't see them remaking the third one for a while, but like there's going to be more coming, I'm sure.
2023 Super Mario Bros. Movie, which as of the making of this video is the 16th highest grossing film of all time, earning about $1.4 billion globally. And the voice of Luigi in the movie, Charlie Day, has publicly stated his interest in doing a Luigi's Mansion movie with Nintendo on several occasions. In a
Ooh.
comicbook.com interview
I
in
actually don't
March
know how
of
well
this
that would
year,
translate
Day
to a
was
movie.
asked point blank if he
I'm
wanted
sure it
to
could
do
have
a
some good
Luigi's
stuff,
Mansion
but-
movie, to which he said,
Yes,
No, he
I
doesn't.
do, big time. You're not the first, but like, let's get that out in the zeitgeist. Let's make this happen, okay? I am in.
and yeah, just a reminder, Didyouknowgaming is making a gaming
So I think that's more or less actually. Yeah, no, I would have cut this out anyways. So that was Luigi Mansion facts. I actually learned quite a bit. If I hadn't stumbled across the Gooigi thing, I would have learned that from this video. So, pretty cool facts. I am looking forward to Luigi's Mansion 4 when it eventually gets announced. This video didn't help me with that. It just makes me want it more, but we'll see it when it comes out. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you'll have a wonderful day, and see you guys next time.